Welcome back, friends. Welcome back to the Southgate Foundation. Today we have Siddharth Varadarajan. Like, he has been introduced in a way, but I would like to give a new introduction. He happens to be a husband of Professor Nandini Sundar, right? Which is a prominent, public intellectual, right? She's a professor in Delhi School of Economics, and also she's a very inspiring to a lot of women, lot of people from human rights and civil rights community. The reason is Nandini Sundar, along with Ramachandra Guha, they challenged the Indian state, specifically when the Indian government was running mercenaries under the name of salva judum. They filed a public interest litigation, right? This case in the Supreme Court of India, and Colin Gonsalves happens to be one of the prominent, civil rights lawyer and Supreme Court lawyer. He defended in front of the Supreme Court Justice, B. Sudarsan.
So Nitya Ramakrishnan.
Nitya Ramakrishnan, yeah.
The lawyer.
Yeah, and the judge, one of the judge is the Supreme Court Justice B. Sudarshan Reddy. He happens to be Telangana, from our hometown, but they have successfully won the case, and the judgment came as a salva judum, as a unconstitutional. But on the eve of International Women's Day, right, I would like to ask, like, we are talking about politics, revolution, let us change it, let us talk about love, right? So how did you fall in love with Nandini Sundar and
Okay, that's unexpected. I mean, we met at university. We were both graduate students at Columbia University in the late 80s. And as it happened, our parents also knew each other, but this is how we met. We met as students, and from there, love blossomed, as they say. Love and life.
Yeah, but because in life we need, not only politics, also love is also very important. Loving not only the partners, but loving the people, loving, environment. So, like, today we have three prominent, doctors with us. Dr. Rahman, Dr. Anil Jonnalagadda, Dr. Samir. So, what is the role of doctors, scholars, right, or public intellectual in defending constitutional rights and free speech?
I think I would say this. I would answer this at two levels. First, there is a specific responsibility of doctors in the Indian constitutional context, where the Constitution speaks of promotion of scientific temper. Now, the fact is that superstition, all kinds of backward obscurantist beliefs, they exist in our society, and those who wrote the Constitution envisaged that that the Indian state and enlightened civil society would actively combat these trends and promote the scientific temper. And doctors obviously have a special role to play, because medical sciences, of course, one of many different branches of science, but a crucial one because it affects public health of people. Sadly, in the Indian context, today you have most unscientific attitudes being pushed. You have governors, you have chief ministers who are saying things like, it's not Darwin who came up with evolution, but the Vedas had it, or that the Prime Minister himself spoke about Indians inventing plastic surgery. So there is a sort of tendency to assail and attack science and rationality, and sadly, rationalists have been attacked, targeted, assassinated. In the last 7-8 years, Professor Kalaburgi from Karnataka, Govind Pansare, these people have been shot dead for their rationalist beliefs. So this kind of a responsibility, I think, is essential for doctors to play that kind of role, and I think there is a significant role that doctors are playing in India. And then, of course, you have the specific responsibility in the context of pandemics, when the most terrible unscientific ideas are being pushed in the Indian, in India, for example, for political gain. You had BJP leaders saying that trying to blame Muslims for COVID. If you remember the first weeks of COVID, they came up with this idea of Corona jihad, just using it to spread poison and confusion in society. And then there were doctors who came forward and said, no, this is utter rubbish. And that COVID spreads for these reasons, this is how you deal with it. And I think gradually that propaganda that the politician was trying to push, using COVID to spread hate, that got dispelled. And people were able to get the benefit of some kind of rational thinking. So I think doctors have an absolutely crucial role to play, along with other intellectuals, but I think specifically doctors. And I'm glad to see so many of you here as part of this program.
So Siddharth, standing on the capital of Delhi, he's been in boxing match with the most powerful people, right? Maybe more than 2 decades, right? He's boxing, he's into they're trying every attempt to suppress free speech, every attempt to suppress the voices of journalists, right? Even the Gauri Lankesh. So what are the challenges, right, in working in the Indian media or journalism, right? How do you analyze the challenges?
See, the challenges essentially, come in the form of, there's lots of pressure on people to abandon the work they're doing. So journalists who work for big organizations are often told, and I know many journalists, young journalists, older journalists, who are good reporters, good journalists who are in bad organizations. And for them, there's a constant fight. They want to report things honestly, truthfully, factually, but their bosses or their proprietors stop them and don't let them do that. So there are fights within organizations waged by individual journalists. There are fights waged by editors against proprietors. There are fights waged by independent media platforms against the government. So I would say the history, the battle for journalism is the battle of people fighting simply to be able to do their job. That's all we ask for. We are not asking for anything special. We're not asking for any rights more than what anybody else has. Often there's a view presented that journalists want some kind of privileges. No, we don't want privileges. But if a reporter goes out there, he or she should have the freedom to report what is happening without being attacked or targeted by a politician or a policeman. When a Kashmiri reporter does a story which highlights, recently there was a case of chinar trees in J&K being cut down, and these are protected trees. Some of the reporters who wrote these stories, they found themselves being harassed and targeted by the police. I think 1 or 2 were even arrested. This should not be the case. India is a democratic country. Reporters have the right to do their job. And there was a reporter in Manipur who made some remarks against the chief minister. They arrested him and charged him with sedition. So this kind of, these are the kind of pressures that reporters face. Women journalists will often find themselves targeted for the most horrible kind of abuse on social media by trolls who are connected to powerful people. So being a journalist today in India is to constantly be fighting, and it's not pleasant. People want to be left free to do their job. This is not, don't tie us down with unnecessary court cases. Don't tie us down with this kind of pressure. Just let us do our job, because when you let us do our job, society as a whole benefits. During COVID, you'll be shocked to know that in Coimbatore, there was one reporter. In fact, he was the publisher of that small website. I forget the name of the website, but they did a story about how during the lockdown in Coimbatore, the ration shops, which is where many poor people get their supplies, how the ration shops had run out of supplies. Now, you would have thought that a government would look at that story and say, okay, here is a weakness, let us rush to get the supplies to Coimbatore. Instead, they filed a case against the publisher for doing that story, saying that you are spreading panic among the people. So, let reporters do their jobs. If you let them do their jobs, then society benefits, government benefits. Instead, the politician has an entirely warped view, and he wants to suppress what we're doing, and this is part of the battle.
Yeah, we are experiencing a wave of fascism, the neo-fascism, be it in United States, be it in India or Europe. Like when you compare a parallel, the historical, fascism and the neo-fascism, what is the political solution, right, to confront the neo-fascism based on your experience?
You see, one of the problems with historical parallels to fascism is because we all learned and studied what Hitler did, and that was the most extreme form. So when you say that what is happening is fascism or neo-fascism, people immediately say, no, you're exaggerating, because there are no gas chambers, there's no 6 million people being killed, right? But the fact is that fascism, even in the 1920s, 30s and 40s, had many different forms. You had the German Nazism, you had Italian fascism, you had Franco in Spain, you had Salazar in Portugal, you had the Miklos Horthy in Hungary. In the 70s, you had fascism under Pinochet in Argentina. So fascism has taken many, many different forms. And there is no doubt today that in many of these countries, India included, you have elements of fascism that are staring you in the face, which is, as I mentioned, growing authoritarianism, the strong leader concept, around whom there is a cult of personality, this constant promotion of the idea that you have enemies within who are undermining the nation. So in India, for example, the enemies within are the urban Naxals, the Muslims, Ambedkarite or Dalit activists, others who are farmers who are fighting for their rights, constant targeting of people fighting for their rights. These are all elements of fascism. And the most important, fascism and neo-fascism do not exist in a vacuum. They represent a form of government aimed at defending the interests and extending the interests of the biggest and richest business houses. This was true under Mussolini. This was true under Hitler. This is true in the US, India, every country where you have these trends, staring us in the face. The idea is to promote the interests of big business. And, we shouldn't lose sight of that fact, that there is a political economy that is operating here. It's not just the whims or madness of one man. There is a political economy. There are very definite economic interests that are being pushed, and all of these things, polarization, vilification, targeting minorities, is all linked towards promoting those business interests.
Yeah. So, Dr. Rahman, we have, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me here and giving me the opportunity to ask questions. Before going to the question, I would like to congratulate the Southgate Foundation of getting so much energy into the hall, getting such an interesting discussion and conversation. So I congratulate you on that. So being a physician, I'm going to ask one medical related question and one which is more towards the political side. So let me start with the first political one. Historically, we have seen that there has always been a tussle or a war that goes on between the media and the government or the people who are the ruling parties of the countries. But in the last decade, this is something new or to a different extreme level that we have seen that the media is curbed. Part of the problem, what I see from a foreign land from here, is that the role of opposition that an opposition party has to play in the parliament is being played by the media. And also there is a significant weakness in the actual parliament opposition. And in the near future, we don't see any significant hope that the opposition is going to be much powerful to tackle these situations, and hopefully we'll have a better government or a more secular government. So being a media person, how do you see or what's the potential solution could be?
Okay. So, frankly, the absence of an opposition is apparent in many of these countries. In fact, I would say this serves to facilitate many of the authoritarian trends that you see, and not just in India, many countries, United States included. So, but in India, the opposition was very weak for the first 2 terms of Mr. Modi. The third term, they are much stronger, and you can see the benefit of that increased strength of the opposition. So there are more than 240 opposition members of parliament today, and it's clear that they have succeeded to a large extent in parliament of changing the way that Mr. Modi was operating, was using parliament. We need a strong India. Any democratic country needs a strong opposition, even for the media to play a role because the media is not. I would not like to say the media takes the place of the opposition, because ours is not the domain of politics, right? Ours is the domain of reporting, investigating, asking questions, empowering the citizen through the act of questioning. Political parties, their domain is entirely different. There is a relationship, you could say. The opposition may get ammunition from the work that we do. So a story that appears in the media that is critical of the government may give ammunition for the opposition to ask the government questions in Parliament. And we see this actually. Many questions in Parliament are asked because an issue is first highlighted in the media. Equally, a strong opposition in Parliament or even outside Parliament may raise issues which then prompt investigations or further reportage by the media. So there is a kind of symbiotic relationship, but one cannot take the place of the other.
Got it. My second question is related more to the healthcare field and the role of doctors. As we all know, there is a significant amount of time that one has to spend to become a doctor, and apart from that, one has to be more passionate and have empathy to taking care of the patients. But in India, what we have seen in the recent past is there has been atrocities or the doctors that has been mistreated, especially if I take the incidents of West Bengal, how a female intern was raped multiple times, and that was like a very horror story. And there were multiple similar instances like in government hospitals. The condition of the government hospital is very pitiful, where the majority of the population was supposed to get a free treatment. So, but looking from a physician perspective or a doctor's perspective, the security is the priority or is more important. So what the government is failing to do or what they have to do to ensure that the doctors are safe and secure from these elements?
So that's a great question. From time to time we read about doctors dealing with two kinds of threats. The first kind of threat is when a patient dies, or a patient is not given treatment of a kind that the family that is not necessarily well versed in medical matters believes that the patient should get. So there have been instances of the family members of patients assaulting doctors out of anger. And this is a serious issue. And there have been enough incidents for the courts to take notice of it, for governments to say that we need some kind of a law. The Medical Association, for example, demands that some kind of action be taken. So I think there's a need to frame some kind of law. But beyond framing laws, I think it's important for, I would say, hospitals as a whole to have, to create a more patient-friendly environment. The responsibility is not entirely of the doctors, in the sense that, hospitals should be well administered. There should be places where patients and their families feel as if they are cared for. I think the more alienated, it's not as if patients don't die in the United States. It's not as if family members are not upset sometimes at the way in which a patient relative of theirs is treated. But you rarely hear of cases where things go out of control, because hospitals in general are better managed here as a public space than they are in India. And this has to do with also the failure of the government to invest adequate amounts of money. What happens is that public hospitals are not well equipped and well staffed. They are not, and as a result of which, most well-to-do citizens tend to avoid these places. So, in a way, the rich or the middle class has seceded from public hospitals. They go to private hospitals. Those poor Indians who can afford, and even if they can't afford, they will sell everything to go to a private hospital because they know they may not get the right and proper treatment in a public hospital. So I think what really needs to be done is more investment in the hospital, public sector hospital, rather than what Mr. Modi is saying of Ayushman Bharat. So they've created a kind of insurance scheme which allows, which gives a certain amount of money. It's not an insignificant amount of money to a patient, even a poor patient, to go and get treated in a private hospital. But what we've seen is, because that treatment can be done at a private hospital, you've begun to see rackets and scams where hospitals perform unnecessary procedures in order to claim that insurance money. Rather than going down that insurance route, which is, in other words, more privatization, I would say a country like India needs to pay attention to public health and a publicly provided healthcare system. That ultimately will be better for the patient and better for the doctor. As for the Calcutta incident, it's a horrific incident. I'm not sure what kind of institutional fix can be done, except that we know that in this particular case, there was a corruption in the hospital administration. We don't know whether the young doctor uncovered something and that's why she was targeted. So you have these other kinds of problems which are not unique to hospitals. Perhaps all public institutions suffer from corruption of one form or the other. But the consequences of this in Calcutta was absolutely horrific. And it's largely thanks to the public protest that some kind of justice finally, some kind of action was taken.
Dr. Anil Jonnalagadda, cardiologist, one of the active member of the doctors fraternity. Yeah, Anil.
I used to joke that my mother feels at least that she's a better doctor than me, because she watches on television everyone except the doctor saying how to do the diet, how to take care of your health. So basically looking at all those TV 24/7, she feels that she's a better doctor than me. And I strongly believe that doctors in this age are not coming into media and not using media as much as they should to create awareness among public. And just a basic example, I think during COVID times, I have seen a lot of misinformation being spread, and a lot of people believed that they should not take COVID vaccine, and many people lost their lives. So I think given that for someone like me, like a common doctor, I don't have any media knowledge. I strongly believe in media, and doctors should be a part in media. What is your suggestion from your experience? How should a common doctor like me get into media? What are the resources we have? Yeah. How do we make more impact in disseminating evidence-based and reliable health information to the public?
So one of the benefits of the digital era, doctor, is that social media platforms and video platforms are within the reach of everybody. I've seen many doctors in India and even doctors in the US who have taken to YouTube, for example, to raise awareness. Many doctors have podcasts. If you had asked me this question even 10 years ago, I would have struggled to give you an answer because, you remember Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CNN, right? That's one doctor's name that we remember who was prominently featured by a big channel and was, giving medical advice on a regular basis. In India, there was never an equivalent of that. So TV never took advantage of the very real expertise. And, many doctors are actually excellent communicators. Their ability to speak in day-to-day language, to understand and be empathetic to people. I never understood why this did not become more common and more commonly featured on television, the kind of Sanjay Gupta type of thing. Every channel should have been having their panel of experts and regularly featuring them. They never did that. Newspapers they still have health correspondents. And the health correspondent would when doing a story, would interview a doctor and get their perspective on COVID or malaria or measles or whatever it is. But what YouTube has done, what Instagram has done, is actually allowed individual doctors with a skill and a flair in communication and with expertise that could either be very, very specific. Like you could have a gastro guy who essentially is, covers all gastro issues A to Z. Or you could have a general physician who deals with a broader spectrum of issues. Or it could be very event-based. Let's say there's an outbreak of hantavirus or outbreak of some virus and people are scared about it. So I think that I would actually encourage any doctor who feels they have that gift to pay serious attention to starting a podcast, which could be just audio, or doing, once you've mastered video and some visual props, to actually do simple explainer videos on, I personally have watched quite a few, found them very helpful whenever I've had the need to look at them, even for simple things. Like I have, we have two dogs, Mojo and Lola, two beagles. And, whenever they have an issue which I'm not able to figure out, it's not, it's quite easy to find, once you know how to search, and once you've developed your list of favorite doctors or vets or whatever who you trust. So I think it's a great resource, and I would say, doing podcasts, doing video, that's the way to go. Don't rely on us now. You rely on yourself, and you will find you'll find a very loyal audience.
If people got suffering with a disease, they go to the doctor, right, for diagnosis and treatment. But what happens if the country got disease, if the political system is suffering with cancer? So in that political context, we need like thousands of people, be it doctors, scholars, right, rights practitioners, to perform the diagnosis, right? How the symptoms of kleptocracy, tyranny, fascism, right? That is what we have to engage all together to find a diagnosis of the the society of the political. So Dr. Samir is also not only a practitioner but also into academics of science. So what would you like to ask?
So I was educated back in India in medicine, and then
Where did you study?
Bangalore.
Bangalore, okay.
Bangalore, yeah, Bangalore. And then for masters, we came here. The reason why we left our country is because the public hospital system is weak then. Even the salaries, if you say, when I was coming out, I was offered a salary of 7,000 rupees. Okay, so my question is, as the difference between the public hospital system and then private hospitalization is becoming more and more in this era, as a media in India, what measures are being taken, from the media standpoint to support the public or government hospital systems?
No, that's a great question, and I wish I had a positive answer, because off the top of my head, I would say the answer to your question is that we are doing very little. The fact is that outside of specific specific medical crises, COVID being one example, I would say the amount of space given to medical issues has shrunk in the 30 years that I've been associated with newspapers and media. I don't think every newspaper used to have one or two medical reporters who would report consistently on medical issues, and even then there tended to be more of a focus on, I would say, lifestyle diseases and not so much on broader public health issues, because that was deemed to be illnesses that the readers of newspapers don't suffer from. So the Times of India, which I worked with, for example, the publishers would often say, look, what's the point of writing about certain kind of diseases when my readers are not bothered by those, right? So Kala Azar, you'd hardly find any coverage because it's happening in rural Bihar. But even at the best of times, I don't think there was that kind of sustained coverage of the state of public hospitals. Occasionally a newspaper would do a series, occasionally a TV channel would do a series, but that was probably a decade ago, maybe even earlier. I don't think you have sustained coverage. Once in a while, when the Aam Aadmi Party government in Delhi launched Mohalla clinics, there was some excitement about this kind of a public health initiative, but then politics soon overtook it because the BJP realized that this is not something that we want to talk about, so then the TV channels began to show them those initiatives in negative light. So I would say the issue that you've raised, it's always been a source of, on the one hand, wonderment, but on the other, alarm and fear. You have huge disparities. This is true. A professor at AIIMS, who would be considered a leading specialist, whether in oncology or orthopedics or whatever it is, were she to leave AIIMS and go to a private hospital, could probably earn 10 or 20 times their salary. And, some do, many don't. And, so it's, I suppose, a combination of, of course, AIIMS is very special, given the kind of reputation it has. But in other public hospitals, maybe doctors are given to that temptation, and you can't blame them. Frankly, we are nobody to judge. Everybody has to make a living. So I think it's the responsibility of the government to make sure that public institutions that need to be properly staffed, are funded well enough that they pay enough to retain the best talent. And this is true even of public universities, I would say. Like now, you have private universities coming up. And again, the salaries that these private universities are offering, like Ashoka, for example, maybe 2 or 3 times what Delhi University or JNU is offering. So there is always this problem of a brain drain from the public to the private sector. And I think that even in a country like the US, you're never going to be able to match salaries, but that disparity need not be so great. But I wish the media would pay more attention to these kinds of things. We did the Wire did a recent, we did a 8-part series. We were commissioned by the Thakur Foundation to do a series on public health in India. So we did 8 or 9 videos looking at the state of infectious diseases, looking at mental health issues, looking at vaccinations, looking at a whole range of issues in the hope of getting these things into the public domain. And we did them in Hindi to reach a wider audience. But what we need is more sustained programming by media platforms and media channels as a whole, and also ways of making this more engaging, so that public health not only public develops an interest in educating itself about these issues, but that the political class as a whole also recognizes the political importance. Like why is it that promising to improve public hospitals and public health is not considered an election winner? Why is Ram Temple considered something that you can win an election on, that you'll build a Ram Temple, but not that you'll build 100 brilliant hospitals that take care of public health crises in all the districts of India? This is a question that we need to ask.
As a civil society, we have to support science and scientific thinking. As a civil society, we've been enjoying the fruits of scientific development. So sometimes we may ignore. So I think we have to support doctors community and scientific community. At the same time, doctors also have to support constitutional rights, free speech. Right? In that way, we'll be cohesive society. Thank you for sharing us. Hopefully it will work. Yeah, thank you.